Assalamualaikum everybody, and may peace be with you. Um, as our tradition is, we're going to start our program with a recitation of the Holy Quran, and to bless this occasion so that we may all learn from each other and from the speakers. I'd like to invite Dr. Dewjee to recite this one, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope all of you can hear me all right up to the end there. So I've been asked to recite, the Quran, and I have chosen, one particular verse, from the Quran, just one particular ayah from the Quran, from Surah number 49. It's called Surah Al-Hujurat, as the name is, and the ayah number is, 13, the verse number 13. And you see, from this verse, we learn that the Quran, places greatest emphasis, God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, places great emphasis on the oneness of all human beings as one large community. And it strongly, very strongly asserts the oneness of humanity as truly recognizable and rejects all forms of tribalism. So it is also really very unique. That while the Quran wants us to recognize our own identity of birth, but it does not mean that we should become exclusive to the other human beings. As a matter of fact, it asks us to recognize our identity at birth. So, for example, if we are Khojas and we are Khojas, if we are Punjabi, that recognition is required, but at the same time, that recognition should actually make us inclusive with all other human beings. And therefore, this one particular verse from the Quran, Surah 49, verse number 13, is really, like this. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. The translation is directly addressing the whole mankind. Oh mankind, the Arabic is Ya Ayyuhan Nas. Oh mankind, we, that is God, we created you from a single pair of a male and a female and made you into nations and tribes so that you may know each other, not that you may despise each other. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is He who is the most righteous of you, and Allah has full knowledge and is well acquainted with all things. So the Kalam Azim. So the idea, that despite differences in our DNAs and fingerprints, we all have a common origin and can relate with each other, accepting every human as a part of our extended family. Whether we are able to trace our bloodlines or not in itself is a powerful unifying idea. An idea whose time has finally come in a world that is shrinking every day. Although, I see and I actually tell my students in the university as well, that although the world is shrunk, the distances have become very close. We can fly from this part of the world to the other part of the world in just a few hours. But our hearts have gone very far. And therefore it is really, words like this, ask us to recognize this so that we can all be together as one large family. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hussein. It's always a pleasure to hear from you the wisdom of the Quran. Once again, I'd like to welcome all of you, and especially the speakers who have spent a lot of time preparing their presentations. And I'm just going to ask very briefly before we begin is to acknowledge this space here that we have. We are gathered together, and I'm just going to read from the. As you know, that we respectfully acknowledge.
Can you speak louder?
Oh, sorry. We respectfully acknowledge that the city of Quan is situated in the territory and the Treaty 13 lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We also recognize that the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee community, these lands belong to them before we all arrived here. Also, at the same time, I want to thank Mark for providing us this facility so that we can all gather together here. Now, as I look ahead here, I see.
Can you put your mic up, please?
Sorry. Okay. As I'm not a very loud speaker, so this is important that I need. As I look behind here, there is a whole library of Mark with a warehouse of knowledge. But the knowledge that we want to present to you today is from people who have experienced what they are going to talk about. They are passionate about it, and they have real knowledge. So this knowledge that you're going to get today is not from books, but from their real life experiences. And I'm going to ask if the speakers who are going to will just stand for 1 minute so that you can know who they are. The first one is Sister Farida Visram. Please, Farida Visram, and I will introduce her to you as she comes to the podium when she speaks. The second speaker will be Brother Abdul-Aziz Dewjee. Abdul, has he been lost? Where is he? Oh, here we go. So, I don't know if anybody doesn't know him, but he's there. And number 3 will be Mr. Daniel. He is going to speak on Tai Chi, and is very gracious to come forward at the last minute. And of course, our own Talib Qizilbash. Talib, he has recently published a book, which I will show you later on, the experience that he has had in publishing a cookbook, which took him, I think, more than a year or so, maybe 2 years, which has been a challenge in a digital age. So that will be coming in that sequence. Just a brief note about OIL. As you know, Organization for Islamic Learning has been doing this OILtalks for the last 4 years. This is the 4th year. COVID kind of held us back. And the whole purpose of this kind of gathering is not only to have intellectual discussion or to promote Islamic thinking, but at the same time, we want to ensure that this is, you connect with each other, build friendship, and eventually building a spiritual community. And research has shown very clearly that when people of like-minded people connect together, they feel better health-wise as well, and the doctors will certify or will agree with me that it's a very important ingredient socially to come together and share our experiences. Having said that, I will not keep you too long, and first thing I'm going to ask Farida Visram to come and share her passion with us. Thank you, Farida.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining me for what's on your plate and why it matters. Your food choices can make all the difference between giving you the energy to pursue your interests or leave you vulnerable to the latest virus in town. We know today that what we eat influences gene expression. It can turn on the genes, or what you eat can turn on the genes associated with health and longevity, or set you on a trajectory for chronic illness. In short, food can either heal or harm. But while our ancestors had to grapple with scarcity of food, our issues here in the West had more to do with excess food, or rather access to too much food. In this talk, I will explore a few beliefs that need to be re-examined. I will also share details of a silent condition called hyperinsulinemia. I know that's a bit of a mouthful. It just means too much insulin. But it's a common factor in many of the chronic health issues that plague our community and what to do about it. But first, let us examine the gift on this earth that makes our journey on this earth possible and which is truly our most valuable of assets. The human body is fascinating. We marvel at images of NASA of the universe, scarcely aware of the universe within. We are made up of trillions of cells that organize themselves into tissues and organs and that communicate with each other without our conscious effort or control. Our bodies have an innate wisdom and language. Consider what happens when we touch a hot surface. Our hands automatically recoil without us even realizing that we touched a hot surface. What about when we ingest something that is toxic to us? Our gut cells automatically, they go into reverse peristalsis and they throw up even before we consciously realize that we ingested a poison. As you sit here listening to me, various regulatory mechanisms are quietly coordinated between your brain and your organs.
Do you want to stand?
This is fine too, it's okay. Yeah, thank you. Your temperature, your blood glucose, your blood pressure are all being kept within certain appropriate limits. Your heart pumps blood around your body. Your lungs take in oxygen and excrete carbon dioxide. Your last meal is broken down, assimilated and converted to energy. Consider the self-healing nature of the body. We're all familiar with the cuts and bruises that we can see with our naked eye. But did you know that when there is a blocked artery, the body actually recruits new blood vessels to grow around it? Clearly, our bodies are always working very hard to protect us, no matter what insults we throw at them. Too much caffeine, carbohydrate-rich foods, pesticide and herbicide residues, or overstimulation, preservatives, excess sugar, until one fine day this finely tuned symphony breaks down and the subtle signs that were always communicated to us now become full-blown symptoms that cannot be ignored. Only then do we give our bodies the attention it is always merited. Now, as a diaspora, we've come a long way. We've left our countries of origin in search of political, social, and economic stability. We've built mosques, community centers, social networks. We're masters at due diligence in every facet of our life. How we worship, who we marry, how we structure our investment portfolios, where we live. Our homes have modern appliances, our freezers are bursting with food, our snack cupboards overflowing. But on the other side of the equation, we are ever more vulnerable to the ravages of conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, cancer, and Alzheimer's. Does our due diligence extend to how we nourish our bodies? And just as importantly, where we source this nourishment? Now, halal means a great deal to us. But are we satisfied with the rituals that declare a slaughtered animal halal? Or are we prepared to embrace a broader and deeper appreciation of the environment in which our food is grown, the microbial diversity of the soil, the chemicals that our food was exposed to before it arrived on our plate, and the health and welfare of the animals whose flesh becomes our flesh? Or are our choices dictated by cost, convenience, and taste? In a recent article by the BC Society for Prevention for Cruelty to Animals, it discusses the overcrowded conditions in which hens that lay eggs live in conventional farms. Hens like us need access to fresh air and movement, and they need to be able to move. Instead, they are kept in very overcrowded conditions in 7 or 8 to a cage. Like us, they need calcium to build strong bones, but because there's a lot of pressure on them to produce eggs, which also require calcium, this happens at the expense of their health, and their bones become fragile. They suffer from osteoporosis and fractures. And even more sad, when the hens are finally spent, they actually lay eggs without shells. This is just one small example of animal cruelty in the food production industry where we can make a difference with how and where we spend our money. Clearly, the time has come to expand our definition of halal to include the welfare of everything in nature, as well as the integrity of everyone involved in producing our food. Because we're all connected. The welfare of everything in nature is our welfare. Now, the notion that food is medicine is as old as time. Our ancestors knew and understood this because they lived in close alignment with nature. Today, the resurgence of food as medicine is fueled by the growing awareness that the pill for every ill model of conventional medicine comes with its own challenges. Did you know that one of the risks of taking a statin is the possibility of developing type 2 diabetes? Or that taking the type 2 diabetes drug, metformin, puts you at risk for a B12 deficiency. Now, B12 deficiency may show up as constipation, diarrhea, exhaustion, but more troubling, brain deterioration and memory loss. A better approach then for those who wish to understand the origins of chronic disease today is to understand how and why the regulatory mechanisms that we just talked about, how do these mechanisms become dysregulated? And to look for answers and solutions in the nutrients and the molecules that actually make up the body. In other words, a food prescription instead of a drug prescription. Fortunately, research today is being directed towards how the body makes and uses energy, because what they're finding is that seemingly disparate health conditions are actually connected when these energy-producing pathways are stressed. This brings us to a brief discussion on two terms that I would really love you to be familiar with. One is insulin resistance, and hyperinsulinemia. So these are two sides of the same coin. This is resistance to the message of insulin and too much insulin, which I'll explain in a minute. So when all is working well, our bodies make energy by converting carbohydrates in food we eat to glucose. This glucose needs insulin to get into the cell, so the pancreas makes insulin, and with that message, glucose gets into the cell. Now, at any given time, we've only got about a teaspoon of sugar in our bloodstream because sugar is a tightly regulated substance. And any excess glucose is stored in our liver, our muscle cells, and our fat cells. When we're not eating or fasting, insulin levels drop, our body taps into these sources of stored energy, and all is well. However, if we continue to consume carbohydrate-rich foods beyond our capacity to safely store this excess energy, two things happen. Our cells, which are now full of glucose, resist the message of insulin to allow more glucose into the cell, hence the term insulin resistance, because there's resistance to the message of insulin, for good reason. And so our blood sugars remain elevated. At the same time, the pancreas starts making more and more insulin in an effort to get the job done. So our insulin levels also remain high. So this is a situation where both our sugars and our insulin levels have now started to track upwards. Now we know today that many years before our blood work actually shows that we have a high fasting insulin, production of insulin in the pancreas is already elevated in an effort to deal with the excess carbohydrates in our diet. And this state of chronic high insulin, called hyperinsulinemia, has major ramifications for the body. It narrows and inflames arteries, think high blood pressure, stimulates the growth of prostate tissue. So for anyone who's dealing with, I guess it's called benign prostate hyperplasia or prostate enlargement, actually has its root in too much insulin. High insulin also affects energy in the brain, and they're now realizing that it's actually connected to Alzheimer's. It causes polycystic ovarian syndrome in women, which is a leading cause of infertility, and many more conditions because every single cell in the body has receptors for insulin. So every cell is affected by the message of insulin. But this is where we come to the good news. Because the body may be complex, but the solutions are simple and well within our grasp. So one of the first things you can do is to actually start testing your fasting insulin. even if your blood glucose is normal, and even if your fasting glucose is normal, the results from a fasting insulin test will give you an indication of how hard your pancreas is working to cope with your diet. And don't be surprised if you don't get an okay from your doctor, because they don't use fasting insulin, they only use it when someone has diabetes. But what about all the years before, well before, when they have an opportunity to track something that could tell you in which direction you're heading? The second thing is to use a continuous glucose monitor. This is being used right now by all diabetics. It's a wearable, it's a 2-week wearable, but it's really something that anyone can use if you want to understand how your diet affects your blood glucose, because the information you get is all in real time. It's something you wear around your arm, and you've got a little monitor, and you can check your blood glucose many times a day and see how it responds to your food, to your emotions, to a bad night of sleep. And so it's a powerful motivator for change. The third is to actually eat foods that do not stimulate a large amount of insulin. So such things as high-quality protein, such as pastured eggs, wild-caught fish, grass-fed meats, essentially whole foods, nothing in a package, just what you would find in the marketplace. I mean, think about all the things we get at the end of the summer. There's beets, there's radishes, there's green and red cabbage, garlic, pumpkin, squash, you name it. Break up with white rice, naans, breakfast cereals, fruit juices, packet snack foods. Not only are they devoid of the nutrients that we all actually need, but they all spike insulin. The next thing to do, and this is really important, is to actually rid your kitchen of any of the oils that we've all become so familiar with and they actually say vegetable oil on the back, and they're made from canola, soybeans, sunflower. These oils are all processed using heat, chemicals to refine them, and they greatly disrupt our cellular function. I personally like camelina oil, which is grown and harvested and cold processed in Saskatchewan. It has a high smoke point, it has a high amount of vitamin E in it, which protects the omega-3 fatty acids that are in the oil from breaking down. And no, I don't have any financial ties to the makers of camelina oil, although I honestly wish I did, because I promote them so much. The next important thing is to prioritize good sources of omega-3. Not because omega-3 is well known, it's everywhere you look at it, but it's actually critical. It's a critical oil needed for good brain function and the function of all our cells. So we often get distracted. We hear about coconut oil and olive oil. These are elective oils. They're nice to have. They've got benefits of their own. But the oils that you actually need that are essential to your functioning are omega-3 and omega-6. And you can find this in ground flaxseed, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, fish such as rainbow trout, wild salmon, and wild shrimp. And you can actually measure your omega-3 levels through a test called the omega-3 index test. But again, don't expect your doctor to necessarily know about it. It's not something we use very frequently, but it's available for you to get. So this way you know where you stand with your own omega-3 levels. The next is very important, and that's giving your body a break. So fasting for at least 12 hours a day. So if you've had your last meal at 7 at night, don't eat anything. Of course you can drink water or have tea, but don't eat anything for the next 12 hours till your breakfast the next day. And if you can stretch this time, that's even better. You want to switch, bypass breakfast altogether, that's even better, because you're giving your pancreas a break and you're giving your body a chance to use stored fat as opposed to glucose. The next important recommendation is to actually move your body. The ills of being sedentary are well established now, and with more than 200 bones, we were really built to move. Our muscles are very active tissues. Our fat tissue is very inert, doesn't do much. But our muscle is actually very, very active and makes much more efficient of glucose and fat. So if you've got more muscle, you're going to dispose of glucose much more efficiently than someone who doesn't. Prioritize sleep. Poor sleep, we know, plays a major role in the hormones that actually drive hunger. I don't know if you've noticed after a night of poor sleep, whether you snack more, you find yourself hungry, because I do. And that's because an increase in the hormone ghrelin, which drives hunger, happens when you don't sleep very well at night. And there's a corresponding decrease in your satiety levels through leptin, which is another hormone. Finally, I want to share some resources with you so that you can fine-tune your own eating strategy and understand this topic a little bit more. One is the work of Marty Kendall. He's the founder of Optimizing Nutrition. He's an Australian-based engineer. He's not a doctor or a nutritionist or a health professional of any kind, but he's just an engineer who had to deal with healing his wife from type 1 diabetes. Now, you can never actually heal from type 1 diabetes. You'll always need insulin. But her blood work is in the range of a non-diabetic individual. And it was everything he did to get her there that he's put on Optimizing Nutrition. And it's a huge resource for me as well. The second is a book by Dr. Benjamin Pikelin. He's a research scientist and the author of Why We Get Sick. And in his book, he discusses how insulin resistance and how having too much insulin play a major role in diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and even prostate enlargement in men. So to conclude, if you are facing a diagnosis or a prognosis, or you're simply concerned about health conditions that run in your family, take heart. Both nature and technology are on your side. If there was ever a time to regain your power to make thoughtful choices and re-examine your relationship with food, that time is now. Thank you.
Farida, thank you so much. First, I have to apologize my mistake that when I asked her to come here, I did not even introduce her. And that is my apologies to you. But just as you know, you must have guessed that she's a nutritionist. After working with the bank for how many years? Almost 25 years in the bank, she decided that that was the field that she has to move in. Her passion moved her into this field. Now, I didn't understand everything here because there's a lot of technical words.
Oh dear.
But I mean, I got the gist of what you had to say. My question to you will be, and I think the audience might say, is that if they want your PowerPoint presentation, is it available?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to share.
Okay, so if anyone wants this to review this the presentation, give us your email, and I think Farida will be happy to send it to you. Now, before I let her go, we've budgeted about 5 to 7 minutes for Q&A for her. So if they have a question, and I know there are several doctors here who might agree, disagree with her, but we will take the challenge here and just don't give her a hard time.
Yes.
Please. Keep it short.
That was an excellent talk. Thank you very much. So, you said many solutions, lots of solutions. The likelihood of somebody changing everything can be difficult. So if you had a client in front of you asking, give me 5 things that I can change to live healthy, what would those 5 most important things would be as a start?
So the first would be the whole foods recommendation. Basically ditching things that are in packets and packages. You want to stick to whole, unprocessed, unadulterated food that you would buy in the marketplace. The second would be cooking oils, because we all cook with something. And if your oils are the deodorized, refined, commercially produced ones, every day you're cooking and you're using it, it harms your body. It simply does. So that would be the second. The third would be to replenish your omega-3 fatty acids, because these are essential oils. Whereas every other oil is elective, it's your omega-3s that are critical to your cell functioning. The third, I would say, is movement, because that's how your energy is utilized. And the fifth would be sleep, because sleep is when you detoxify and regenerate. So that's essentially.
You have another question?
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, sir.
It was amazing deliverance, mashallah, I learned a lot, especially.
And grow from that exercise. So it's almost in my mind, sort of, the two have to go together. One doesn't, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, compensate for the other. In other words, if you only ate healthy and didn't move, then that would be a problem. But if you also were you did a lot of high intensity exercises, etc., but your diet wasn't very good, I think you'd feel the effects of it pretty soon. So the two really have to go hand in hand. It's not an entirely compensatory mechanism, if that was your question.
Anybody? Oh, we have a number of questions here. We'll get one more, and then later on you have a question too. Because of the shortage of time, what we're going to do is that there are 3 more speakers, and hopefully we will have time at the end of the presentation that we can get the panel of people to come, and we'll also have the time during refreshments to talk to her, to all the speakers that you want. We'll take one last question before I get the next one. Is anybody urgent? Anybody urgent has a question?
Alaikum salam.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. What caught my eye, which is something I'm really suffering from, is lack of sleep. Because of all the things that have happened in my life in the last few years, sleep has become very difficult luxury, I would say. What I'd like you to do is, for the sake of all of us, can you please give us some discipline around hopefully getting some sleep? I'm lucky if I get 2 hours of sleep. So.
Really, I'm really sad to hear that, because I know how I feel when I don't sleep enough.
I've been sleeping for, I would say, about 3.5 years since my son passed away. So it's been very difficult.
Okay. My condolences. I would say the most important thing with sleep is that you have to expose yourself to the cycles of light and dark. That's how we were built to. We can't be inside too long. We have to see natural light, and that's when our circadian rhythm, so the nature's rhythm becomes our rhythm. So it's exposing yourself to the cycles of light and dark, and actually part of that is already built into our religion. If you want to, when you wake up for your Fajr prayers, that early light. But anyway, the bottom line is expose yourself to tons of sunlight. The second I would say is your nervous system. So what you do at night to sleep is actually the culmination of what happens during the day. So when I'm agitated during the day because I'm responding to things in a way that leaves me, all ruffled inside, it has a role to play in how I sleep at night. Okay? So it's maintaining and learning to maintain a calm demeanor, a calm nervous system, being able to actually put your stresses into perspective, so that by the time the night comes, you're not carrying that pain with you. That would be my second recommendation. The third is, eating a high calcium snack before bed. I find calcium very calming for the body. So this, essentially, if your diet is strong, you'll have the nutrients to give you the energy during the day and the depth of sleep at night. And then last but not least, I would say melatonin is very helpful. So many of us who have dysregulated rhythms, for whatever reason, will really benefit from melatonin. So melatonin is a hormone that our body naturally makes, but when we find ourselves out of balance, then just taking, starting with even 0.5 milligram before bed, actually can set the stage for us to regain our rhythms back. And to be honest, if that's your situation, I'd love to talk to you at the end of this. And give you anything else that I feel can be of assistance to you. But this is essentially what I would suggest as sort of your talk.
Thank you. Thanks, Farida, for your. All I'm hoping that after listening to your presentation, I live up to 100 and get my stomach inside. I follow your advice.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
The topic that I have, and it's kind of ironic, that the speaker before me is talking about the oils. That's what this organization is all about. Our acronym is OIL, Organization for Islamic Learning. Renaissance and Transcendence is what I would like to share. And to do that, about a month ago I was in Dubai on my way back from, after 37 years, visit to Zanzibar, my birthplace. And I was with a friend that I have known over 40-some years. And in the course of conversations, this one came up that kind of rang some bells because we hear about it all the time. Why am I here? Why was I born? I did not choose to be here. What do you respond? How do you respond to something like that? My response was, now that you're here, what do you think makes life meaningful? The question that remains is that we are all actors. We're born right at birth. We're all actors. But the question remains is, do we act or react? And you will find that our folly and the sadness is we have a tendency to be more reactive than being proactive. And again, it's what I was telling him. I said, now that you're here, what is it in your life that you are really, really proud of? Take stock. If it's not attitude and gratitude, we have a failure here. And what are some of the greatest risks that we find at the moment that is consuming us? Here's something that I'd like to share that I came across. Is a BBC correspondent. He says, we specialize in manufacturing disinformation that could never be imagined. We are the mouthpiece of your slave masters. Question is, are we losing our sense of reverence? Our sense of self-worth? Change, if any. What will it take for us to survive? Objective is if we are prepared to think outside the box and to understand that it is our belief system that is under sabotage. So what does one have to do? If you join me, pack your bags and let's travel together. As I share, evolve. When we examine our self-value, our moral, ethical standards that we adhere to ourselves as well as humanity, what is it but other than the values that undermines our self-worth? Yes, we definitely are at a crossroad. In this critical time that we now live, our way forward requires some real deep insight. The tragedy is life, and life is not that we die, is what dies within. The path that we take is so critical that decides the future, that determines our destiny. A principle of awareness is, can it be anything other than self-worth? The divinity within. Knowing thyself, the spiritual being having human experience. We talk about the power of altruism. The success is aligned with spiritual nature before the physical self. Renaissance, what is it all really about other than a rebirth? Knowledge is under one law, the law of love. Religion versus spirituality, what is the difference, or is there one? Religion, to me, I look at it, it tells us as a way of life. Spirituality, on the other hand, tells us how to live our life. Being mindful and aware, life is consciousness when you are ever. The question begs to be asked, let me put this to the floor. When was it ever somebody taking a stand, be it at any of the religious gatherings, that we are so ritualized in response that somebody has ever stood up and say how worthy you are? وَنَفَخْتَهُ فِي الرُّوحِ الْقُدُسِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you are the Khalifa, the representative. Here's an advice from somebody who is on the news at the moment, Elon Musk. Attach yourself to a mission, a calling, a purpose, awakening to the energy of the wholeness. That is who you are, that allows you to quicken and align so that you start walking in the truth. That is forever so empowering. As we are told, and I am sure everybody's familiar, knowing the truth is what sets you free. So where is this taking us? Self-development is an adorable quest. Yet, the research for self-development tends to be unsatisfied. In the words of Ghazali, he defines the soul, also termed the heart, as a jewel-like substance whose only business is recollection, contemplation, and careful considerations. That is, soul is the leader and the commander of our faculties. Sadly, self-development remains just that. Some never reach a point of realization as to what it takes to be soulful. In humanity, the way I look at it is being soulful is where human ingenuity unfolds. Nobility is beyond race, color, or class. It is the right path of Buddhism, the path of the universal love of Abrahamic faith, and the way of one being spiritually inclined. Meaningfulness is being human, and it takes one to be humble. Everything that supports, sustains, retains, uplifts, nurtures, takes a being to be human, being soulful. At the end of the day, with all the creation, to me, I look at it, all of the ones that we are here on this God-given earth, the challenge is to be human. The purpose that I wanted to share here is of life is not being happy, it is being useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have what it takes. Some difference that you have lived and lived well. Here's the three things that I really would like to share for considerations. And to me, when I look at it, these are the gifts that we are all accountable for. Your eyes, your thoughts, your words. When we talk about the eyes, I was working with a dean on the junior high. About a month ago, she gave me a call and says they packed up 2 buses with 50 children, and they took him to the BNDs, the deaf and the dumb children. Question raised. Excuse me? He says, yes, this is part of the extracurriculum program for these children from our schools, that they're learning to communicate. And I said, when they're there, what do they do? He said, oh, it's a sports event. I said, really? So how on God's earth do you communicate with somebody who is deaf and dumb? Your eyes are the portrait of our souls. They are so powerful. And the way this is hinged in between your eyes and your words is your thoughts. And when it comes to your words, God rest my father's soul in peace. He asked me what kind of challenge me, and I'm thinking to myself, he says, Abdul, where is your tongue? Hello, excuse me, Dad. What are you trying to do? I asked you a simple question. Where is your tongue? I said, it's in my mouth, Dad. He said, really? Do you realize that it is behind two cages? You have a soft cage and a hard cage. Be careful lest you have to come back and say, that's not what I meant. That means you were not engaged. Your eyes and your words are hinged on the thought processes. Love is not a feeling. It is the spirituality that actualizes the divine self in human form. It's okay. It's okay. That was for me, set up for my clock. As the mystics tells us, if only our eyes saw the souls instead of bodies, how different our ideal beauty world would be. In the words of Kabir, lift the veil that obscures the heart, and there you will find what you're looking for. Only in the heart can one experience the divine presence of the truth. And Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi, if you knew the secret of life, you would choose no other companion but love. So what does all of this have to do with us? It is the egg. Yes, the egg. Not the kind that is manufactured. This is the real egg. The metaphor, a mental and emotional prison. And what does it take? Where is the key here? We all have an egg of our own. The objective is waiting for it to be cracked. Realizing the divinity within. As a divine love, we tend to fail to understand that we are intended for the greatness, to be great, to be good, to be the best. He would not have called us the Khalifa otherwise. What is it that we are short of? Let me share here. Here's a narrative of the American parables and African parables, all right? Creating a gathering of animals together saying, I want to hide something from the humans until they are ready for it. It is the realization that they create their own reality. The ego said, give it to me, I will fly it to the moon. The Creator says, no, 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 no. They'll get there and they'll find it. The salmon said, how about the bottom of the ocean? No, they'll learn to dive to the depth. If they can find the pearls, they'll find this one too. The buffalo said, give it to me. I will bury it in the great plains. No, 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 no. They will go out there and dig that one too. And then the grandmother owl said, put it inside them. Bing! You're right. Done. That's the last place they will look. This, my dear, is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the fitrah. فطرة الله التي فطر الناس لا تبديل لخلق الله ذلك دين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. How beautiful this verse is in the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it is innate in each and every one of my creations. What is it? The power to be. The power to be. The innate makeup, the source of self-worth, all that is within. Sometimes one just has to die. Inside, to be reborn and rise again as a strong and a wiser person. Rest assured, I'm not in the undertaking business. Okay? But I think we all need to be born again. And in the end, This is what I want to leave you with. To be loved is a gift in all of creation. Spiritual awakening is not mystical or religious experience that is only available to few. It recognizes the true nature of our essential self. Without love, I challenge you, there is no God. So at the end of the day, remember the three areas out there that we're all accountable for. The mind, the body, and the soul. This is it. I thank you for your attention.
What a presentation. I think a topic like this requires a whole day seminar
Oh, definitely.
to fully
Definitely.
understand the
I
depth.
front it.
And I know that Abdul, having known him for so many years, he spends a lot of time in reflection in the Quran, and I've always admired what he comes up with, and I'm happy that we share many things together. So, Abdul, if you would be standing still here, we might have some questions for the next few minutes. Yes, yes.
Assalamu alaikum, an inspirational talk. So you touched on religion, spirituality, a bit of divinity, and you said to be a human. So in your opinion, what makes one a good human being based on all this?
I think that's the question in life, really, when you look at it. What does it take to be human? Can it be anything other than love? As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, He says, you are from love, with love, and the sole objective is to be love. When this is something that we personalize it, we condition it. If we do that and just be that, be the love that we're intended to. My relationship with you or anybody, can it be anything other than? We talk about demanding a respect. It is earned, and that is only through love. Compassion, only through love. Hatred is what? What is hatred? It's devoid of love. That's all there is to it. Can it be anything else? And when you look at it, this whole, the situation that we're all finding ourselves in the moment is because of, all right, withholding and recondition it. I will do this if I will love you, if only that and nothing else.
Thank you. And I just want to share these 6 little stories that with lots of meaning. Okay. One was once all villagers decided to pray for rain. On the day of the prayer, all the people gathered, but only one boy came with an umbrella. And that's called faith. When you throw babies in the air, they laugh because they know somebody is there to catch them. And that's called trust. Every night you go to bed without any assurance that you're going to be awake or you'll be alive, but you still set up your alarm. We plan big things for tomorrow in spite of knowledge of the future, and that's called confidence. And lastly, we are the world of suffering, yet we get married and have children.
Spoken like a true doctor. Thank you.
Now, our next speaker is going to be Mr. Daniel Pikelin. Daniel came to us through Sister Farida Visram. Daniel, please. And briefly, this is the first time that I have met him, but I have read his, he sent before we accepted his presentation, he sent us a brief background of him about how he came to Tai Chi and how it has changed his life. And here he is today to share with us his experience of 37 years doing Tai Chi, meditation, and all those beautiful things that makes us truly human, as Abdul has put it. He feels very blessed that he has found this calling, and I always say that blessed are those who have found their passion in life. Not everybody has found it. So Daniel, your floor.
Thank you.
Please.
Can you hear me? Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here today. I have 3 or 4 stories to tell you, and they will illustrate how I fell into Tai Chi. And some of it is personal. I try not to be too personal, but I have to say some things that are personal from my life. And this drawing was made by my daughter, Pikelin, and she's an artist. It was a long time ago, but so I'll tell you the story in a moment. So the talk is about Tai Chi and the meaning of life. So it's personal, but I think it's also universal. And later, after I tell the stories, so hopefully I can cut them short, we'll tie it all up with the Taoist theory of internal alchemy. A big, tall word, but we'll see how it goes. So, first thing I have to say is, I grew up in Argentina, and at about 7 or 8 years old, it came to me that we're going to die. And I told, I went to my parents and said, is it true? We're going to die. And they said, yes. And I just couldn't believe it. And so I said, why do we live then? Why do we live if we're going to die? And I was very young, 7, 8. I think it was before 9 because my brother was born at the age of, when I was 9. And so this suffering of not knowing and nobody answering the question kind of became a theme in my young life. And I kept asking the questions, and finally I gave up. Nobody had the answer, and I thought others had answers. So, fast forward about 20 years, when I was in my 20s, searching for meaning again, I traveled to Europe. And on the way to the flea market, in the subway, I met my future wife. 50 years later, I'm still married to this woman. So that is such serendipity, that things that are, totally unplanned could change the rest of your life. So if I had stopped tying my shoes on the way, I wouldn't be here today. Because my wife talked me into coming to Canada. And of course I was 20 or 21. Of course I said, sure. And so I came to Canada, got married, and I went to York University, had a little degree on Bachelor of Arts. My interests were so broad and wide that I couldn't commit to anything. So 3 years later I had a BA, and I was offered an opportunity to work in the family store. And I said, okay. I think, only 6 months, but the trouble is, 9 years later, we're still there. But about that time, 9 years into I was not made to be a retailer, but I'm someone who does not quit. But this is a lot about letting go. Sometimes you need to let it go and not hold on to things. So, I found Tai Chi, and like I said, 9 years into my 6 month stay in this business. And In this particular Tai Chi school, I was very impressed because there were two exercises we practiced. And the one in particular, related to this, looks like this. Back then, we knew it as donyu. Now I think of it as sitting the spine. So the exercise, I'll do the old way, but I have a meniscus tear in my left knee, so I have to be careful. It looks like this. First of all, you must relax, especially here. And then it goes down like this. That's a rough idea. So, in this store, it was my mother-in-law's store, there was a door in the back, and it had never been opened. And one day, it was the backyard, so one day I found a bundle of keys, and I was determined to open it, found the key, and kept it, put the rest back. And then from then on, every lunch hour, I would go out and practice in the backyard. And it was really a small place, not very visible from the sky. And I started to practice. I called it Tai Chi, but today I would call it Tai Chi Qigong. There's more about that a little later. Hopefully I have enough time. So I started to practice two exercises. One is the up and down. The other one involves taking a step and shifting the weight from one leg to the other. Two exercises. There's a lot more to Tai Chi. Sitting. My belly is rumbling now. There's a lot of noise coming from my belly. So the thing about Tai Chi is vital organ exercise. It's not just an exercise for, or lifting weights, isolating muscles. This is a whole body thing. Every time I do this, so maybe someone would be so kind to put a hand in my belly as I move. Or maybe this will... It is not long enough. Rasa, would you mind?
Since I want to get my stomach in,
So,
I heard it. Yes.
reverse. So, can you describe it?
How come mine doesn't come out in noise?
I can teach you, but it was going to take a little while. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, there was definitely sound coming out, so there is some internal organs movement, which I think we don't see, and I think is very important.
Exactly. So,
Absolutely.
thank you. Really, the only way to say it is to improve it, because I wasn't just talking. And it's, yeah, the organs move. What does that mean? So, back to the story. These two exercises in this school were practiced with this purpose, to mobilize the organs, but it wasn't really out in the open. If you really wanted it, you had to kind of find the opportunity or pay. I'm not sure how it worked, but back to the story. I started to practice every day as an outlet for my frustration. And I just have to say that sometimes adversity is a great friend because it's what motivated me. And it gave me relief from boredom of dusting shelves and things like that. Organizing merchandise, selling stuff I didn't really care about, but it was, I had to make a living, and I had a wife and kids too by then. And then I had 2 more after. So one day I decided to do 200 of this, and it's hard to do. When you do this slowly, it's really hard to do. But I set myself a kind of hard task. And so I started. And I started to count. And by the time I got to 50 or 60, this, what Rasa just experienced, happened in a big, big way. And then sweating and heart pounding. But I had 200 to reach. So I kept going and going. Finally I get to 198, 199. I was about to say 200, and I hear a huge noise from the sky. It's not like a helicopter, but today I know it was a flock of birds. So many birds make this noise. But it took me 30 years to figure what I just said, figure it out. Because just one bird came down at the 200 count. It wasn't 195, 197, it was 200. And it dropped right here between my feet, which is where the chi is going. It's going up and down. The thing about this is that this is the beautiful bird landed. It landed and I took it. It came from the sky. I took it in my hands, and now what? I have to go back to work. The work I didn't want to do. And so I had a sense of duty, and the bird wouldn't fly away. I put it up and it flew away. I went back to work, and 20 years later I was still there. And we bought the business. I became the owner of the business. And I transformed it into a specialty store. It was fishing, fly fishing. We thought, I don't know if you've ever seen fly rods. It's a lot like Tai Chi. The motion of throwing a line is a lot like Tai Chi. So we taught this, and we taught flies, making flies from feathers and things like that. But the business wasn't doing well. We had to, after about 11 years into being the owner, CEO, I had to call it quits. And so, can you move it forward? That's starting. One day going home, with this thing in my mind, closer, not close, closer, not close, closer, not close. I had prepared a sign that said, final closing sale. The business was 8 years old. And I felt, how could I take this in my hands and let it go? And so on the way home, I'm driving my little car through the side streets with my head going like this. All of a sudden, bang! This guy hits my window. And at the moment of impact, the eye looked at my eye and died. The bird died right there. I stopped the car, got up, there was the bird dead. I put it on the side, I went home, came back to the store next day, still doubtful. That same day I found 2 dead birds in the front, baby birds. I go to the back, another dead bird. This is a bird thing. And then I didn't connect to the first one, the dove that landed long time after. But I moved forward to the next thing. How are we doing for time? How much time?
Okay. Go ahead.
Could you move it forward, please? Yeah, that one. Yeah. So after I closed the store, I had to do a deep search, and I discovered Shiatsu, which is a type of bodywork modality involved with Eastern medicine and based on Chinese medicine, although from Japan. It's Chinese medicine through Japan. And it has the aspects of the Japanese feeling to it, but my modality is Zen Shiatsu, so there's an aspect of tranquility, peace, and emptiness to it. And so, in the school of Zen Shiatsu, I met my second teacher from the Tai Chi Meditation Center, Donna Oliver, and much later, I started to learn a second form of Tai Chi, and much later, she taught medical Qigong 16-week course, and I took it. One of the meditations was like this. And then I'll describe what happened. So maybe you want to do it with me. If you like to stand,
Let's do it.
those of you who want to.
Yeah, let's get movement.
First of all, we start by sinking feet wide, shoulder width apart, and then let your tailbone lead the way. Like that. Very good. Sit. Sit. Sitting means just that. It's called sitting the spine. Like that. The knees are not forward, but just that. Just that. Remember the first exercise I talked about? It was like that. But I don't do that anymore. This is part of the Tai Chi form all the time. So, but this is a Qigong meditation. It's called a 1 to 10. It's a very old Taoist practice. It goes like this. It's really mental. There's only one move at the end. But so if you get tired, please sit. You can do it sitting too. So it goes like this. 1 is fun. Imagine a ball of energy up above your head, and like oil drops to your head and bathes you right into the floor. 2 is shu. Your feet disappear into the ground and become one with earth. Imagination is part of Qigong. The Qi is led by imagination, or in Chinese it's called Yi, Y-I, intention. And so, shoes, 2 is shu, disappear into the ground. 3 is tree. You imagine roots coming out of your feet, deep into the ground, at least your body height or more. 4 is core. That energy, as you breathe in, it comes into your belly. It comes first into your tailbone. It spills over into your belly. And then breathing in, 4 is core. Eventually, the volume of qi can be, the way to explain it, please. Sorry. The volume is called mass formation. So imagine a sandstorm in the desert. You know, a handful of sand in the air is a breeze blows it. But now it's sandstorm, and you're there. Very different, isn't it? Qi is like the sand. One little grain, the mind must guide it. 2 little grains is like a geometric progression. All of a sudden, it ignites. In physics, it reminds me of pulsars. There are stars that become almost black holes, and then they shoot a beam into space that can be seen for millions of light years. Incredible. I think it's like that. But the exit is up the head. So 4 is core, 5 is alive. The chi circulates from here and returns this way. It's called the microcosmic orbit in Taoism. And then 4 is core, 5 is alive, 6 is thick. This energy gets projected outside of the body, so surrounding yourself with it in an egg shape, and that fixed 7 is heaven. Then you imagine energy from the sky, or in Chinese philosophy it's called heaven, but it doesn't have a religious connotation. It's just up there, and comes down, meets the other earth energy, and then 8 is gate. We reabsorb it through every orifice and pore of skin in the body, and it collects inside to 9 is shine. And we imagine a light bulb, or a tube actually, very bright in the center of ourselves. 9 is shine. 10 is the invocation. I was surprised to find this invocation in a Taoist practice because it has a religious feeling to it. But it's like this. I invoke. What did I invoke? Back then I'm still a shiatsu therapist. Before every session, I would do this for at least a year. And nothing ever happened. But I just did it, 1 to 10. And 10 is invoke. What do I invoke? I invoke that my hands not have their own volition. Allah or God is that volition. I let them go. Because if I put my own thing into it, I cannot do it. That's Zen Shiatsu. So, I arrive to 9 is shine. I go, I'm about to say invoke, and every single bird in the park. I was at Allen Gardens. I don't know if you know Allen Gardens. It's beautiful greenhouse, and my client was around the corner from there. And this huge noise. Every single bird in the park, hundreds of birds, came flying. I thought they were going to hit me. And they flew this way and landed about 2.5 feet away from me, 3 feet maybe, in all directions. The bird landed. So this is my Toby's, my first daughter. She's the only one who ever listened to the story other than you here now. I mean, I've told the story, but nobody cares. Nobody cares. So thank you so much for listening. I'm not finished. I'm not finished. That was just a thank you. So I looked around, I could not believe it. I looked at any people, any witnesses? No witnesses. Just me. I didn't dream it. So, and exactly at number 10, when the intensity of meditation had been peak, same as the dove landed at 200. How is that possible? Now, can we have the next slide? That's another story, but I have no time to tell it. Okay, so this is a Chinese word that means Tai Chi Chuan. Chuan. Tai Chi means the supreme ultimate. It has nothing to do with movement. But when you put Chuan in it, it has to do with, look, it almost looks like a fist here. Like that. Tai Chi is, one more please. That's Tai Chi. And it's the same as the word Tai Chi, which means the supreme.
The
Yin Yang. And it's called the Tai Chi Tu, which means diagram. So it's not a movement at all. So I want to make this clear because, you know, we need to know what we're talking about. But Tai Chi Chuan, however, my main thing is the movement here, the organ, the exercising the organs and really looking after the spine, right into old age, 80s, 90s, we should all live to old age with a good spine. All the organs attached to the spine. So the noise you heard when you touched my belly is because the term, all organs attached to the spine, therefore, now I can do it at will. It took me 37 years to do that. To show you that I'm not just talking, I can do it. Back one more please. This is Tai Chi, but we already talked about it. The next one please. This is Qi. You can see it's a different Qi. So Qi as in Qigong, this is supposed to be rice cooking in a pot. That's Qi. You know, but it is a good symbol of nourishment, is what makes us, you know, air, food, water, and other things. Emotions also, food. Next one, please. Next one. This one is called Neijing Tu. It's not a diagram, and it really incomprehensible. But I put it there so you get this. This is way before the Christian era. This is Taoist internal alchemy. But now I'll show you my drawing of it. One more. That. I drew that last night. So this is to explain how the birds landed. Because I was generating an incredible line of qi that probably extended way up in the sky. There are 3 Tantien. This is the most important here. So the beginner is advised to work on that. Whatever it takes. It might take weeks or months or years. Especially if you're already past your 20s, right? I was in my 20s when I started. No, sorry, 30s. And then there's a middle and there's an upper. They're called Tantians. Tien is a field, Tan is a seed. So there is a place where you plant a seed to grow a precious substance. The substance then takes mass integration. Through mass integration, it grows to a huge volume, and then it circulates through all meridians, which are like tributaries from the ocean. This being the ocean, 3 oceans actually. When those 3 are in harmony, we have health. And through Tai Chi and moving the spine, we can get there. And let us one, and I'm done. One more. There. So a few weeks ago, I found this in my Instagram feed. And it says, as long as one has 3 square feet of space, one can take a trip to paradise and stay there to enjoy life for 30 minutes without spending a single cent. And then someone commented, this is true. One time I was wrongfully jailed. I had my own cell, and I was able to do my Tai Chi. They could take my freedom, but could not take my Tai Chi. Once you have it, no one can take it from you. And this is, I end here because that's exactly what I always felt. You know, if I went to jail, I'll be happy. I just know what to do. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you. Talib is also an editor. That's why I guess he thought of writing this book. He's an award-winning writer who has had his articles published in Canada and abroad. He has also worked in the manufacturing, high-tech, and financial industries. And recently he published this book, which I just talked about with Chef Shah Hossein. Shah would have wanted to come today, but I don't think she's feeling very well, and that's why she couldn't make it. Otherwise, I'm sure the ladies would have loved to talk to her. The book is called Dying Like a Sultan, Unveiling the Flavors Hospitality and Royal Feast of Hyderabad, India. Talib is the current secretary of our organization. And the book here, Talib, please. You know how to arrange this morning.
Thanks, Reza. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum salam.
So you want to publish a book, right? Okay, it's fantastic. It's a great goal. It's a big goal. It's ambitious. There's the punchline right there. That's my advice to you. Don't do it. The end. No, of course not. It's challenging, right? It's a slog. When we started this project, we sat down and we asked ourselves some questions. And, you know, we finished this book last year. We published it in December last year. It's been a year. And the interesting thing, we started to go back. We started to go back. I'll maybe just pick this up. We started to go back and sort of revisit everything. I pulled up my notes from our very first meeting I had with Shah Auntie. So Shah Auntie was like my mom's sister. She was like my second mother. And I looked at the date on that piece of paper. November 27, 2013. And we published the book in December. It took us 9 years. I'm a bit of a procrastinator too, that might be part of it, but it's tough work. So the question is, I was just joking, but don't do it. Obviously, you want to do it, right? If it's something you want to say, it's your passion, you got to do it. But before you get into it, you have to really understand what publishing is. What is publishing? Publishing is the creation and distribution of printed works. Pretty simple. Books, magazines. But what does a publisher do? A publisher guides an author through that process. The distribution process, the vision, first draft, editing, design, cover design, marketing, sales, accounting. So when I was joking about not doing it, that's the reason, because you got to do all that stuff if you're a self-publisher. Now there are companies out there that will help you along the way. They have software. They'll take care of distribution. And they can be very helpful. But in that process, you lose something. You lose a lot of control. If you want to make this step, whether you go with a self-publisher that has software and can take care of distribution, or if you want to chart your own path and do it all on your own, you have to ask yourself some very critical questions first. Why do you want to publish? What's your goal? What do you have to say? What's your story? We did a cookbook, but you could be doing anything. You could be doing a children's book, or you could be doing a novel. You could be doing a historical book. You have to also ask yourself, who is it for? Why do you want to publish it? Do you want to actually sell this thing? Do you want to be a best-selling author? Or maybe you just want to leave a legacy. And that was the case with Shah Auntie. This is her project. It's her legacy for her children, for her grandchildren. Sales weren't the goal. What is your message, or why is your message or story important? Relevance, timeliness, that's the most important thing. To anything, if you pick up the newspaper today, the stories are there because they're relevant today. Some of them, most of them won't be relevant tomorrow. So when you approach a project like this, you have to ask yourself, who cares? Who's going to care? But if it's a legacy project, like the one we did with this cookbook, the question mattered, but it didn't matter as much. And then finally, are you prepared for the long slog? All that work I talked about. Now, writing, as we know, and we've all written things here, is a very solitary process, right? That's one part of it. Maybe you already have a manuscript ready. All that other stuff that follows the writing is going to double, triple, quadruple the time you put into it. When you answer those questions, that's going to help you develop an approach. So, you know what type of book you're going to do, you're going to know what it's going to need to look like in the end. Science textbook is very different from a novel, very different from a children's book, it's very different from a cookbook or a coffee table photo book. All these things will determine what it's going to look like. What elements must be inside of it. Charts, graphs, photographs, all these types of things. When you understand that, you'll be able to answer the second question. How are you going to do all those things? How will you develop the necessary content? You already have the ideas, do you have the photographs, do you need to hire a photographer, an illustrator? And when you answer those things, you'll say, what skills do I have that I can do it? And then where do I need help? What resources do I need? Online resources, a company, your friend, your mother, anyone. What resources will you need? Where will you have to ask for help? Who will you need to hire? Now, the good part about doing this exercise, and we did it as well, we went through it, is that all this thinking and planning is part of the good part of publishing, because it's going to save you a lot of grief. It's going to give you critical answers, right? And the bonus is you can do all this in an afternoon. This is the easy part. So that's some of the good. All these other things are part of the good part of publishing too. Start a new project, you're excited, right? You're standing there at the starting line and you can already picture the finish line. You can picture the glory. So that excitement is amazing. I don't know if we had that excitement for the 9 years it took us to do it, but in the beginning it was there. And it's a creative journey. We all love to create things. Anyone who's ever done anything, built something with their hands, seen a plant grow from a seed, right? That satisfaction of building something yourself, creating something yourself, it's irreplaceable. And of course, the good part of self-publishing is you maintain control. Your vision can be maintained from the first day to the last day. No one's interfering with you. No one's talking about whether it's marketable or not marketable, like, I don't like that photograph, or they don't like your voice when you're writing, right? Your project, no matter what you do, will not appeal to everyone. You just accept that now, right? There are tons of people who don't get it, who don't like it, but that doesn't matter. Because there will be people who get it and who like it. Sorry. No? Go back just then. Okay. The other good part about self-publishing these days is we live in a very, democratized technological environment. Everything's available. Technology is available, software is available. You go online. You can learn how to use all this stuff. I don't know if there's a better free resource these days than YouTube for learning things. And then, if you don't want to use all the resources, but you want to do it really from scratch by yourself, well, then you have a lot of options, right? The whole creative process is open wide to you. You can do it any way you want. But, again, be prepared. And of course, part of the good here is the constant learning. Every day, you're going to pick up new skills if you do this, try to do this on your own. And the possibilities are truly endless. Of course, with endless creative ideas, endless learning, endless exploration, there's also at times endless chaos and endless errors. That's where it takes you to the bad. Actually, this slide in here, I forgot this was here. This is basically part of the learning that we had to go through. Because we chose not to use any software that was out there, we did everything from scratch so we could achieve the vision that we wanted to achieve. I had to learn photo editing. I had to learn how to make a map. So I had to figure out, well, how am I going to make a map? I can't figure out how to learn. Because again, the idea is you are creating a copyrightable creation. You can't just start taking maps off the internet, right? You have to have something you own, or you have to license something. But I wanted something very specific. Again, it's the vision we had. So I had to learn Illustrator on top of Photoshop and InDesign and all these things. So this is a licensable map. It cost me $3.99 to have the license for this map. But it's not the map I wanted. I had to work in Illustrator to turn it into that map. So that was, again, a good part of the learning. It was fascinating and fun. Of course, the bad is there were a lot of versions before I got there. And there were a lot of mistakes along the way. But the bad is a long list too. When you're on your own, all the expenses, you have to shoulder them. Right? And it's hard. And like I said, all that learning is great. You feel very accomplished at the end, but sometimes it feels like it's too much. You learn something one day, the next day you forget it, because you're trying to learn 3 other things at the same time. Procrastination. You can get overwhelmed and you can start procrastinating. You can try to avoid doing the stuff you need to do. Learning something. The details. The details are probably what make a product like that any good, right? And you have to slave over them, obsess over them. And that type of dedication can also be a distraction. You can get lost in the weeds sometimes. Editing photos and looking for tiny imperfections. And then missing puzzle pieces. So, what do I mean by missing puzzle pieces? It means you can have a plan, you can start working on it, and all of a sudden, somewhere down the road, you realize something's missing. So after you cross up a whole bunch of things off your list, you add something else. And you keep working and you realize something else is missing. At one time during this process, we thought we should pitch this to a real publisher. We should see if we can get someone to back this. And I put together a proposal, and I sent it to a friend of Shah Auntie's who's a food entrepreneur. She had a great business in Toronto called All the Best Fine Foods. And she's a best-selling cookbook author. She published many cookbooks. And when Shah Auntie had her food business, before we did this book, she had a very successful business making chutneys and sauces. She would sell those in All the Best Fine Foods. So we called up Jane and said, can you please look at our proposal? We're going to pitch this idea. So I was very proud of my proposal. I thought it was perfect. So we sent it to her, and of course she came back with lots of complimentary feedback, but it was also, we thought about this, and we thought about this. One of the things she said, you need more chutneys, you need more sauces, you need more stuff that people can throw into a pan and instantly make a meal. So, I mean, if you take a look at this book, if you get a chance, I mean, there's some things you're not going to want to cook in there, because some recipes are too long. And she also talked about things like terroir, which is something people talk about with wine. She was saying, this is a really interesting thing. This is a very regional book, right? Talk about the land, the physical fertile soil What makes its food, like what makes the produce? Yeah, taste the way it tastes. So these are some of the bad I'm showing you here. So part of the bad is we make errors. We make, we struggle to take photographs. We struggle with lighting. You get pictures that are too dark, too blurry, too, I don't know, composition is horrible, colors are all wrong. And of course, we have probably 100 bad photos for every one good photo we have. Then, as you go through all that, adding, working at it, filling in, finding those missing puzzle pieces, you get to the ugly, the stuff that was hard. So we did everything on our own, from scratch. However, there are publishers out there that will help you. The term for them in the industry is vanity press publishers. So we're not talking about your Random House and your Penguin, these huge institutions. We're talking about people, some of them, I won't call them all bad, but some of them are less ethical than others. So they prey on people who can't get their manuscript published. They say, hey, we'll look after you. Those guys rejected you, we'll take you on. And we'll do everything for you. You just give us the manuscript. We'll edit it professionally. We'll design it. We'll publish it. You just have to pay us a small fee, right? But you pay the fee, you'll also get a bigger royalty than they would, the other publishers would give you. Of course, it doesn't always work that way. They promise you you're going to get professional services. They take your money, and then you don't hear from them. Or they do a subpar job. So this is one of the things people have to look out for in the when you go down the self-publishing route. You can also feel very lost. Sometimes there's too many aspects to handle, right? You don't have the expertise. You just want to create something. You want to write. You don't want to design the book. You want to take the photographs. And then you have to start learning about the business side of things. ISBN numbers that go on the outside of your book if you're going to try to retail it. You have to learn about copyright. So then you can start legal issues, and you get accounting issues. There's too much on your plate. You get overwhelmed. But when you're overwhelmed and you're working on your own, you can feel a little isolated. Now where are you going to turn? And then what happens? Then you think, oh, I'm doomed now. That fear of failure starts to set in. And if you have a fear of failure, you're probably just going to, you'll be frozen for a while. You'll procrastinate. And no one likes that, right? The self-doubt. Now, of course, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is a very famous film. And I'll probably not doing Sergio Leone or Clint Eastwood any favors by changing the title. But in this process, when you get to the end, these are also horrible covers we came up with, right? This is like part of the exploration, the chaos, the trial and error. Someone told me that thing looked like it was floating over the table. Other photos that just didn't work, right? Too much space, too much color, too wrong angle. But the good, the bad, and the ugly can also lead to the beautiful. There's a journey, right? Irreplaceable journey I have a shot on to you. There's a support we got from friends and family. 9 years, we got a lot of support. We did not make this book on our own, right? And that's the thing, it's called self-publishing, but really it's not really self. I mean, there's two of us, and there was people who provided feedback on photographs and covers, people who read things over for us, people who tested recipes, people who give us ideas, that support. So it's not self-publishing, it's ourselves publishing or something, I don't know, something like that. And the final product, that's the beautiful. And then the feedback you get. It's a hard process, it can be a lonely process, it can be a discouraging process, but in the end it's a beautiful process. Thank you very much.
We are 4:15. Very silent there. I think we have a few minutes. Our plan was to finish at 4. Before we wrap up, I'd like to ask Sabina Mauji to come and say a few words on behalf of OIL. And I think we'll ask questions as we afterwards.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Reza Uncle. Thank you, Talib. That was amazing. Just a few housekeeping issues and refreshments are ready outside. So salams and thank you to every member and guest who attended today. I'm Sabina Mauji Daya and a member of the OIL board. Thanks to Reza Uncle for the speakers today and coordinating all these wonderful talks. We had some stimulating speeches today and talks and just so enjoyable. And I think we're going to continue this tradition. We have more in-person events in the works for 2023, so please stay tuned to your emails. Our community thrives when we all are able to get together in person like we have today. And if you like today's events, please let your friends and family know about them. Also, if you have ideas or topics or even speakers that you would like to hear, or even if you yourself would like to speak in the future, please contact one of our board members. Just a word on membership. We have to remind everyone to please consider renewing your memberships or becoming new members. And also we would appreciate any donations that you may be thinking about. Murtaza Bhai Mohammad will be standing at the refreshments table, so you won't even be able to leave until you speak to him today. Our fiscal year starts in July, so if you have not renewed since July, then you are currently not on our membership list, so please attend to that. I must also mention to any folks here that are new to the MARC library, please take a few moments to walk up these stairs and see the displays. I promise you it's worth the climb, and a nice reminder for some of the amazing things that our community does on a regular basis. Jazakallah.